The snow fell in silent sheets across the mountain town of Greyhaven, each flake a whisper of winter's promise. But on this night, the whispers would become screams. Serafina Emberheart ran through the darkness, her breath tearing from her lungs in ragged gasps. 20 years old, and she had forgotten how to run without fear. Blood traced a thin line down her temple, warm against the bite of December wind. Her boots slipped on ice-slicked cobblestones as she rounded the corner into the town square. There, the statue. Always the statue. Her legs gave out 10 feet from its base. She crashed to her knees in fresh powder, palms sinking into cold that burned. The stone wolf loomed above her, black as a starless sky, its massive head forever raised toward the heavens. Empty eyes that somehow still saw everything. "Please," she whispered to the darkness, "please, I can't do this anymore." But the statue had never answered before. 5 years of lonely confessions. 5 years of one-sided conversations with carved stone. Why would tonight be different? Behind her closed eyelids, flames danced, orange and red and hungry. She heard her mother screaming her name through walls of fire, felt strong hands shoving her toward the window, remembered the last words her mother ever spoke. "Find the stone wolf, baby. Find him and wait." Sarah's eyes snapped open. Her hands pressed flat against the wolf's massive paw, worn smooth by centuries of weather and touch. The stone felt different tonight, warmer, or perhaps she was finally losing her mind completely. "I don't want to be alone anymore," she said to the silence, to the snow, to the statue that had been her only companion for 1,825 nights. "I can't bear this emptiness. If there's any magic left in this world, any mercy at all, let me find somewhere I belong." The words hung in the frozen air. Then the world cracked open. A hairline fracture appeared in the black stone, glowing with light, the color of molten gold. Sarah jerked backward, but her hands stayed frozen to the wolf's paw. The crack spread, multiplying like lightning captured in rock. The sound of splitting stone echoed through the empty square, a thunderclap that shook snow from rooftops. The statue trembled. No, impossible. But denial meant nothing in the face of magic older than memory. The black stone exploded outward in a cascade of fragments that dissolved into sparkling dust before touching the ground. And from within that prison of ancient enchantment, something emerged that stole the breath from Sarah's lungs and made her heart forget its rhythm. A wolf, massive beyond anything natural. Silver fur that seemed woven from moonlight itself, thick and lustrous, rippling over muscles that spoke of strength, capable of tearing through steel. The creature stood easily twice the size of any wolf she had ever seen in the mountains. Its shoulders came up to her chest even as she knelt in the snow. But it was the eyes that truly captured her. Molten gold, burning with an intelligence that was distinctly impossibly human. The wolf's gaze locked onto hers, and a voice resonated directly into her mind. Not through her ears, but deeper, into her very consciousness. Deep, masculine, rough with centuries of disuse. "Thank you," Sarah's scream died in her throat. 1,825 nights. The voice continued, gentle despite its power. "I counted every one. Your voice was the only light in an ocean of darkness." The massive wolf stepped closer, silent as falling snow. Golden light began to shimmer around its form, growing brighter until Sarah had to shield her eyes. When the light faded, a man knelt before her. He was tall, even kneeling, powerfully built, with the same silver hair falling past broad shoulders in thick waves. Those golden eyes remained unchanged, glowing with an inner fire. His face was all sharp angles, in masculine beauty, marked with 3 scars that ran from temple to jaw on the left side. He wore no shirt despite the freezing temperature, his chest and arms covered in swirling tattoos that looked like they had been inked in liquid gold. Ancient symbols she could not read but somehow understood. Strength, protection, oath eternal. "My name is Kyle Moonshadow," he said, his voice now coming from lips instead of her mind, though it still carried that same rough warmth. "I was Alpha of the Northern Packs 3 centuries ago, before betrayal and dark magic sealed me in stone." Sarah's hands trembled. This couldn't be real. People didn't turn into wolves. Statues didn't come to life. Magic was fairy tales and children's stories, not midnight revelations in snowbound squares. But Kyle's hand reached out, slowly telegraphing his movement. His fingers were warm when they touched her cheek, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "You are Serafina Emberheart," he said softly. "Daughter of Sarah, last of the Flamekeeper bloodline. And your family did not die in an accident 5 years ago. They were murdered." The word hit like a physical blow. "Murdered." "No," Sarah whispered. "It was a fire. The investigators said it was an accident. A lantern tipped over, they said. Just terrible luck." Kael's expression darkened, his golden eyes flashing with anger that made the air crackle with unseen energy. There are no accidents when it comes to the Flamekeeper line. Your mother, your father, your younger brother. They were assassinated by a witch named Morgana Nightshade. She sought to extinguish your bloodline because your fire is the only thing capable of destroying her completely. Sarah shook her head, backing away. This was too much. Too fast. Her entire world tilting on its axis, everything she thought she knew, crumbling like the stone statue that had just given birth to this impossible man. Morgana killed them when you were still a child. Kael continued, his voice gentle but relentless with truth. Before your power could manifest, she believed she had eliminated the threat, but she did not know about the protection spell your mother cast with her dying breath. Sarah's vision blurred. She remembered her mother's hands on her shoulders, the desperate strength in that final shove toward the window, the way her mother's eyes had burned with something beyond fear. Determination. Purpose. The flames that consumed your home also hid you, Kael said, marked you as untouchable until the time was right, until you could break the curse that held me, until you were ready to claim your power. I don't have any power, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I'm nobody, just a baker's assistant who talks to statues because she has no friends. You're wrong. You have to be wrong. But even as she spoke, warmth bloomed in her chest, a heat that had nothing to do with the winter cold. It spread through her veins like liquid sunshine, foreign, yet somehow achingly familiar, like remembering a dream upon waking. Kael smiled, and it transformed his harsh features into something beautiful. Give me your hand, little flame. Sarah hesitated. Everything in her screamed that this was madness, that she should run, that accepting his hand meant accepting a truth that would shatter her careful, quiet, survivable life into pieces. But what life did she really have? 5 years of loneliness. 5 years of existing rather than living. 5 years of talking to stone because stone couldn't leave her. She placed her trembling hand in his much larger one. Now, Kael said, turning her palm upward, think of fire. Think of warmth and light and protection. Think of defending someone you love. Everyone I loved is dead. Not everyone. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning she wasn't ready to examine. Sarah closed her eyes, tried to think of fire. But all she could remember were the flames that had taken everything from her. Orange and hungry and cruel. She felt her chest tighten, panic rising. Not that fire, Kael's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Your fire, the one that lives in your blood, the one your mother carried and her mother before her. Think of the love that made her sacrifice herself to save you. That kind of fire doesn't destroy. It protects. Sarah's breath caught. She thought of her mother's smile, her father's laugh, her little brother's joy when she told him bedtime stories. She thought of wanting to protect them, of wishing desperately that she could have saved them from the flames. Heat surged through her chest and down her arm. Flame erupted from her palm, golden and pure and beautiful, dancing across her skin without burning, responsive to her will like an extension of her own body. The fire cast flickering shadows across Kael's face, reflecting in his eyes like twin suns. Sarah gasped at the sensation. It felt right in a way nothing had felt right for 5 long years, like finding a missing piece of herself she hadn't known was lost. There you are, Kael murmured, wonder in his voice. There is the power that has been waiting for you to claim it. But before Sarah could respond, before she could process any of this impossible night, a sound cut through the winter air. A howl, long and mournful and wrong, carrying a quality of corruption that made her skin crawl and her newly awakened fire flicker with distress. Kael's head snapped toward the sound, his entire body going rigid. His eyes flashed, and for a moment she saw the wolf beneath the man. She knows, he growled, pulling Sarah to her feet with effortless strength. The curse that bound me was tied to a protection ward around this valley. With my freedom comes its collapse. Another howl joined the first, then another. A chorus of wrongness descending from the mountains. What is that? Sarah's voice shook despite her attempt at courage. Shadow wolves, creatures corrupted by death magic, driven mad with bloodlust and pain. They were once living wolves twisted by Morgana into monsters. They have been waiting at the barrier for 300 years. Now nothing stands between them and Greyhaven. How many? Kael's expression was grim. Enough to tear through this town in minutes. The fire in Sarah's palm sputtered and died as fear gripped her heart. We have to warn people. We have to run, Kael said. Draw them away from the town. Make ourselves the target. But I can't fight. I don't know how to use this. I just made fire for the first time 30 seconds ago. I know. Kale's hand cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. But I can fight. And I will stand between you and anything that tries to harm you. I swear this on my life, Serafina. You saved me from 3 centuries of darkness. I will not let the shadows take you now. The conviction in his voice should have been impossible. They had just met, but something in Sarah's chest recognized him, knew him, had been waiting for him through 1,825 lonely nights. Trust me, Kale said. Before Sarah could answer, the first shadow wolf burst into the town square. It had once been magnificent. Sarah could see that in the structure beneath the wrongness. But Morgana's magic had twisted it into an abomination. Its fur was matted and patchy, falling out in clumps, to reveal skin mottled with black veins like spreading infection. Eyes that glowed red instead of gold, filled with madness and agony and a hunger that could never be satisfied. Foam dripped from its rostral, and the smell of decay rolled off it in waves. This was not an enemy. This was a victim. Can it be saved? Sarah asked desperately as the creature circled them, growling. I don't know, Kale said honestly. My pack was taken 3 centuries ago. I do not know what remains of who they were. The shadow wolf lunged. Kale moved faster than thought, shifting mid-motion. One moment man, the next, the massive silver wolf. He intercepted the attack, catching the corrupted creature by the throat and slamming it to the ground. The shadow wolf writhed and snapped, but Kale's jaws closed with terrible finality. The creature went still. Sarah's stomach turned, but she didn't have time to process because 5 more shadow wolves poured into the square, followed by 10 more. Their howls filled the night, a chorus of the damned, and then light blazed from the darkness. Not the corrupted red of the shadow wolves, but the warm golden glow of ordinary lanterns. Figures emerged from the buildings surrounding the square. People Sarah had worked beside for 5 years, but never truly known. People who had kept her at arm's length, maintained careful distance. Now they ran toward the danger. At the front stood Orion Blackwood, the baker who had given her a job when no one else would. 45 years old, with silver threading his dark hair, broad-shouldered from years of kneading dough. He carried a sword that looked ancient, the blade etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Beside him ran his son, Jasper, 22, and lean as a whip. Jasper, who had asked Sarah to dinner once and accepted her gentle refusal without bitterness. He wielded 2 long daggers with the confidence of someone who had trained. 3 other townspeople flanked them, all armed with weapons that hummed with old magic. Get away from her! Orion roared at the shadow wolves. The creatures hesitated, confused by the multiple threats. Kale shifted back to human form, putting himself between Sarah and the advancing pack. These people will die if they fight, he said urgently. Tell them to run. But Orion met Sarah's eyes across the snow-covered square, and what she saw there shocked her. Recognition, not surprise, not fear. He had known. Somehow Orion Blackwood had known what she was all along. We don't run, Orion said firmly. Not from this. Not anymore, Swam. A shadow wolf broke from the pack, lunging toward Jasper. The young man sidestepped with practiced grace, his daggers flashing. The blade sank into the creature's flank, and it howled, the sound piercing the night. But it didn't fall. The wound sealed almost immediately, black magic knitting corrupted flesh back together. They healed too fast. Jasper shouted, dancing backward. The fire, Kale said urgently to Sarah. Your sacred flame can burn away the corruption. It is the only thing that can truly harm them. I don't know how. Panic made her voice sharp. Then learn. Quickly. 3 shadow wolves rushed them as one. Kale shifted again, a blur of silver fur and lethal grace. He caught one wolf, his jaws closing on its spine. Orion's ancient sword took another, the blessed blade finally finding purchase where Jasper's daggers could not. But the third wolf headed straight for Sarah. Time slowed to honey. She saw every detail with crystalline clarity. The foam on its jaws, the madness in its red eyes, the black veins pulsing beneath patchy fur. It was 10 feet away, then 5. Fear turned to something else. Not courage. She wasn't brave, but she was so tired of being afraid. Sarah thrust her hands forward, reaching for that warmth in her chest, remembering her mother's love, her father's strength, her brother's laughter, remembering Kale's voice in the darkness, speaking to her through centuries of stone. I will not let you take anyone else from me. Golden fire exploded from her palms. Not a small flame, not a flickering candle. A wave of purifying white that washed over the attacking wolf like a tsunami of liquid sun. The creature howled, but this time the sound was different. Shock and pain, giving way to something that might have been relief. The sacred fire burned into it, scouring away the black corruption that had infected every cell. The red madness in its eyes flickered, faded. For just a moment, Sarah saw clarity return. Saw the wolf as it had been 300 years ago. Saw it recognize Kale. Then it collapsed, the dark magic finally burned away, allowed to die clean, and return to the earth. Sarah stared at her hands, at the golden flames that danced across her fingers. The fire responded to her will, growing brighter when she focused, dimming when she pulled back. It didn't burn her. It felt like coming home. More coming, Jasper's shout snapped her attention back to the battle. 15 more shadow wolves poured into the square, drawn by the commotion. Too many. Even with Kael's lethal efficiency and Orion's blessed blade, they were outnumbered. Sarah looked at the people fighting beside her. People who had kept their distance for 5 years, but now stood between her and death. Jasper bleeding from a shallow cut on his arm, but still fighting. Orion wielding that ancient sword with grim determination. 3 others whose names she barely knew holding the line. Her fire flared brighter. "Get back," she shouted. "Everyone, get behind me!" For a moment, no one moved. Then Kael's voice rang out, commanding and absolute. "Do as she says. The Flamekeeper has awakened." They fell back. The Shadow Wolves sensed weakness pressing their advantage. They charged as one, a wave of corruption and madness. Sarah closed her eyes, thought of everything she had lost, everything these people stood to lose. Thought of 5 years of loneliness ending in this snow-covered square. Thought of Kael emerging from stone after 3 centuries of darkness. Thought of her mother's last words. "Find the stone wolf, baby. Find him and wait." She had found him, she had waited. Now it was time to fight. The fire erupted from her in a column of golden light that pierced the night sky. It spread outward in a wave, controlled and purposeful. Not wild destruction, but purification. The sacred flame that her ancestors had wielded for generations. It washed over the shadow wolves like dawn breaking over the mountains. They howled as the corruption burned away. Some collapsed immediately, their bodies giving out after 3 centuries of unnatural existence. Others staggered and shook themselves as the black veins faded, revealing healthy fur beneath. The ones that survived looked at Kael with eyes that had gone from red madness to clear gold. Recognition flooded through them. They dropped to their bellies in the snow, whining softly. Submission and respect and overwhelming relief in every line of their bodies. Kael shifted to human form and moved among them, touching each head with gentle reverence. Sarah heard him whisper names. Old names from 300 years ago, welcoming home the fragments of his pack that had survived this long nightmare. The flames in Sarah's hands flickered and died as exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She swayed, legs trembling. Before she could fall, strong arms caught her. Kael, warm and solid and real. "You did it," he murmured into her hair, his voice rough with emotion. "You saved them, gave them peace or freedom. Either way, you gave them more than they have known in 3 centuries. Sarah wanted to respond, but her throat was too tight with emotion. She buried her face in his shoulder and let herself shake. Not from cold, from reaction, from the magnitude of what had just happened. Behind them, Orion's voice cut through the aftermath. "Get the wounded inside. Celestia, we need your healing knowledge. Jasper, help me with barriers around the square. If more are coming, we need to be ready." Sarah lifted her head. "Who is Celestia?" As if summoned by her name, a figure emerged from the shadows of the church at the edge of the square. An old woman, perhaps 70, with silver hair braided in an intricate crown around her head. She wore robes of deep blue embroidered with silver thread, and her eyes were sharp as a hawk's despite her age. "I am Celestia," the woman said, her voice carrying despite its softness. "Memory keeper for the Flamekeeper bloodline. I have been waiting for you, child, since the night your mother died." The world tilted again. Sarah felt Kael's arms tighten around her, steady and grounding. "You knew," Sarah whispered. "You all knew what I was." "We suspected," Orion said, approaching with his sword still drawn, scanning the darkness for threats. "Your mother came to me before she died. Told me to watch over you. Told me that when the time came, you would awaken. Why didn't you tell me?" The words came out sharper than intended. "Because the protection spell required you not to know," Celestia said gently. "Required you to live as if you were ordinary. Knowing would have broken the enchantment. Made you visible to Morgana before you were ready." Jasper limped over, pressing a cloth to the cut on his arm. "We kept our distance to keep you safe. Every one of us who knew, we stayed away. Let you think you were alone. It killed us to do it, Sarah, but it was the only way." Sarah looked at the faces around her, people she had thought simply didn't care. Orion, who had given her a job but never invited her to family dinners. Jasper, who had asked her out once but never pushed when she refused. The others, who had been polite but distant, they had all been protecting her. I'm sorry, Orion said quietly, for making you feel abandoned. We thought if we got too close, if anyone saw us caring too much, Morgana would realize you were important, would realize you had survived. But she knows now, Kale said grimly. She sensed my awakening, sent these shadow wolves to test our defenses. This was just the beginning. Then we prepare, Celestia said with steel in her voice. We have 3 weeks at most before she comes herself. 3 weeks to train the last Flamekeeper to fight a witch who has been perfecting her craft for 3 centuries. 3 weeks, Sarah repeated numbly. 3 weeks to learn to use powers she didn't understand, to prepare for a battle against a witch who had murdered her entire family. It was impossible. Kale's hand found hers warm and steady. We start tomorrow. Tonight we rest and recover. Rest? Sarah laughed, the sound edging toward hysteria. How am I supposed to rest when everything I thought I knew is a lie? When I just found out I'm some kind of magical warrior destined to fight an immortal witch? By remembering you are not alone, Celestia said softly. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. Worn and aged, the cover stained with smoke. Your mother left this with me. She made me promise to give it to you when you awakened. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the book. She recognized it immediately. Her mother's diary. The one she had kept locked in the drawer of her bedside table. The one that had supposedly burned in the fire. Open it later, Celestia advised. When you are ready, the words inside will help you understand. The old woman turned to leave, but Sarah's voice stopped her. What is a memory keeper? Celestia smiled, and it transformed her aged face with unexpected warmth. I keep the histories that must not be forgotten. The stories of Flamekeeper bloodlines stretching back 2,000 years. The knowledge of how sacred fire was first gifted to humanity. The records of every battle fought against the darkness. She paused, her eyes meeting Sarah's with fierce intensity. And I will teach you everything your mother did not have time to pass on. Then she swept away into the night robes billowing behind her like wings. Orion began organizing the townspeople, directing the wounded to the church, setting up watch rotations. Jasper gathered the 5 shadow wolves who had survived purification, leading them to shelter in an old barn at the edge of town, which left Sarah and Cal standing alone in the snow-covered square, surrounded by the evidence of battle. Scorch marks on cobblestones, dark stains being covered by fresh powder. The place where the statue had stood for 300 years, now empty. Come, Kale said quietly. You need warmth and rest. He led her to Orion's bakery, to the small apartment above where she had lived for 5 years in isolation. But it felt different now. The loneliness had been broken, even if just for tonight. Kale built up the fire in the small hearth while Sarah sank into her worn armchair, still clutching her mother's diary. She stared at it, afraid to open it, afraid of what truths it might contain. You do not have to read it tonight, Kale said, settling on the floor beside her chair. Close enough to touch, but not crowding, giving her space. Did you really count? Sarah asked suddenly. All those nights. Every one. Your voice was the only thing that kept me sane. I could not move, could not speak, trapped in stone while the world changed around me. But I could hear. And every night at the same time you came. Sometimes you cried, sometimes you laughed, telling me about your day. Sometimes you just sat in silence. But you came. Always. I thought I was going crazy, talking to a statue. You were healing in the only way you could. Sarah's eyes burned with unshed tears. What happens now? Now we prepare, train, learn to control your power before Morgana arrives. And if we fail, Kale's golden eyes met hers, fierce and certain. We will not fail. I have waited 300 years for you, Seraphina Emberheart. I will not lose you to the witch who took my pack, my freedom, and 3 centuries of my life. The conviction in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her, because it meant this was real. All of it. The magic, the danger, the destiny she had never asked for. But she looked at Kyle, this impossible man who had been stoned for 300 years, who had counted every one of her visits. Looked at the diary in her hands, proof that her mother had known this day would come. Looked at her palms where golden fire had burned without consuming. Maybe destiny was not about having a choice. Maybe it was about choosing what to do with the path laid before you. Okay, she said softly. Okay, we fight. Kale smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible and full of promise. Together, he said, we fight together. That night, Sarah finally opened her mother's diary. The first entry was dated 5 years and 1 day before the fire. The handwriting was achingly familiar. My dearest Seraphina, if you are reading this, I am gone. And I am so sorry, baby. Sorry for leaving you. Sorry for the burden you must now carry. Sorry for all the years you will spend alone waiting for the curse to break. But know this, you are stronger than you realize, braver than you believe. You carry the sacred fire of our ancestors, and it will protect you when nothing else can. Trust the stone wolf. When he awakens, he will keep you safe. I have seen it in the flames. Your future is bound to his, and together you will end the darkness that has plagued our bloodline for generations. You are not alone, my love. You were never alone. Even in stone, even in silence, your guardian was always there, waiting, as you waited for him. This is not the end of our story, Sarah. This is the beginning of yours. All my love, forever and always, Mom. Sarah closed the book, tears streaming down her face. Cale did not speak, did not try to comfort her with empty words. He simply sat beside her chair, one hand resting on the armrest, where she could reach it if she needed. Outside, snow continued to fall on Greyhaven. In the mountains, more shadow wolves howled, and somewhere far away, a witch named Morgana Nightshade smiled into the darkness, feeling the awakening of her ancient enemy. The battle had begun. But in a small room above a bakery, a young woman who had talked to stone for 1,825 nights finally understood why she had never given up hope. Some things were worth waiting for, even if the wait was measured in centuries, even if the cost was measured in blood. And tomorrow, when the sun rose on a changed world, Serafina Emberheart would begin to learn what it truly meant to be a flamekeeper. But tonight, she simply held her mother's words close to her heart and let herself believe for the first time in 5 years that maybe she could survive this. That maybe, just maybe, she could win. Dawn broke over Greyhaven with the kind of crystalline clarity that only comes after fresh snowfall. The world looked clean, innocent, as if the battle in the square had never happened. But the scorch marks on the cobblestones told a different story. Serafina stood at her window watching the sun paint the mountains gold. She had not slept. How could she when her mother's diary lay open on her nightstand, filled with prophecies and warnings written in familiar handwriting? When every time she closed her eyes, she saw flames and shadow wolves and a witch's face she had never seen, but somehow feared with every fiber of her being. A knock at the door pulled her from dark thoughts. "It's time," Cale's voice came through the wood, gentle but firm. "Training begins now." Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Time, as if she could learn in 3 weeks what her mother had spent a lifetime mastering. As if she could become a warrior when she had spent 5 years learning to be invisible. But the alternative was watching Greyhaven burn. Watching more people die because she was too afraid to try. She opened the door. Kael stood in the hallway, silver hair, pulled back, wearing simple training clothes. In the morning light, his golden eyes seemed softer. Less wolf, more man, but the strength remained coiled and ready beneath civilized appearance. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "Did you?" A small smile touched his lips. "I spent 300 years sleeping. I am done with rest." They walked through the quiet streets as Greyhaven woke around them. Shopkeepers swept snow from stoops. Children ran past laughing, throwing snowballs. Normal life continuing as if the world had not shifted on its axis the night before. But Sarah noticed the differences. The way people's eyes followed her now, some with gratitude, others with fear, all with questions they did not yet dare to ask. Orion met them at the town's edge where the buildings gave way to forest. Jasper stood beside his father, already warming up with stretches and sword forms. 2 long practice blades rested against a snow-covered log. "Serafina," Orion greeted her formally, then his expression softened. "Sarah, thank you for staying. Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has a choice." Celestia's voice came from behind them. The old woman emerged from the tree line like a spirit of the forest itself, her blue robes seeming to blend with the shadows. "You could have run, many would have, but you chose to stand. That matters." "I don't feel brave," Sarah admitted. "Bravery is not the absence of fear," Celestia said. "It is acting despite it. Now come, we have much work to do and very little time." The training grounds were a clearing deep enough in the forest that stray flames would not endanger the town. Ancient trees ringed the space, their branches heavy with snow. Someone had cleared the center, revealing hard-packed earth. 2 types of training, Cale explained, his breath misting in the cold air. Physical and mental. You need both to survive what is coming. "Jasper will teach you to fight with blade and body," Orion added. "I taught him everything I learned from my father, who learned from his father. 3 generations of guardians protecting flamekeepers." Jasper stepped forward, offering one of the practice swords. He was slender, but moved with the easy confidence of someone who had trained since childhood. "We'll start simple. Stance, balance, how to fall without breaking bones." How encouraging, Sarah muttered, taking the wooden blade. It was heavier than she expected. You'll fall a lot today, Jasper said with a sympathetic smile. Sorry in advance. He was not exaggerating. Sarah fell 10 times in the first hour alone, learning to keep her weight centered while moving, understanding how to pivot without losing balance, discovering that fighting was as much about footwork as blade work. Each time she hit the ground, snow cushioning the impact, Jasper offered a hand up and gentle correction. Feet wider. You're too narrow. Don't lean forward. Stay balanced. Good. That was better. Now do it again. Across the clearing, Kale worked with her on the mental aspects. After Jasper released her for a break, muscles screaming, Kale led her to a fallen log by a half-frozen stream. Sit, he instructed. Close your eyes. I thought we were training, not napping. Fire connects to emotion, Kale said, settling beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth. You summoned it last night through panic and desperation. But to wield it with control, you must master your feelings, not suppress them, master them. Sarah closed her eyes, listening to the stream burble beneath its shell of ice. Think of your anger. Kale's voice was low, hypnotic. At Morgana, at the unfairness of losing your family. Do not push it away. Feel it. Understand it. Then set it aside without letting it consume you. Anger rose sharp and hot. 5 years of it. 5 years of asking why. Why her family? Why that night? Why she had survived when they had not? Her hands clenched. Good, Kale murmured. Now the grief, the loss, let it wash over you. Acknowledge. Then let it flow past like this stream, present but not drowning. Grief came in waves. Sarah's breath hitched, tears squeezing from beneath closed lids. She felt the ache of her mother's absence like a physical wound, heard her father's laugh in memory, saw her little brother's face. I know, Kale says softly. I know it hurts, but pain does not have to control you. You can carry it without letting it carry you. They sat in silence for long minutes, Sarah learning to hold her emotions without being held by them, to feel without drowning, to remember without breaking. When she opened her eyes, the world seemed clearer, sharper. And when she called the fire, it came steady and controlled, a small flame hovering above her palm, responsive to her will. Better, Kale said with approval. Much better. The days blurred together, fall rise fall again, Jasper's patient instruction, the burn of overworked muscles, learning to read an opponent's body language, understanding leverage and momentum and how a smaller fighter could defeat a larger one through skill rather than strength. By the 5th day, Sarah managed 3 consecutive strikes without losing her balance. Jasper grinned with genuine pride. See, you're a natural. I'm covered in bruises and can barely lift my arms. That means you're learning. The moment of levity shattered when Sarah, attempting to summon fire to warm her frozen hands, lost control. The flames shot sideways instead of up. Jasper yelped and jumped backward, his feet tangling. He landed hard in the snow, eyes wide with surprise. Sarah rushed over, horrified. I'm so sorry. Are you hurt? Jasper started laughing, great whooping laughs that echoed through the clearing. I've been teaching you to fight for 5 days, and you take me out with accidental fire. That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Despite her embarrassment, Sarah found herself laughing too. Real laughter, the kind that came from the belly and released tension like a valve opening. When was the last time she had laughed like this? Years. Literal years. KL watched from across the clearing, a small smile playing at his lips. But the lighthearted moments were rare. Most of the time, training was hard, exhausting, pushing her body and mind beyond limits she had not known existed. Sarah would return to her small apartment each night, barely able to climb the stairs. She would collapse into bed with muscles screaming, only to lie awake as her mind raced with everything she had learned, everything she still needed to know, and the crushing weight of insufficient time. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of sunrise training and midnight exhaustion. 2 weeks of slowly, painfully building skills that warriors spent lifetimes perfecting. And then the dreams began. It started small. Sarah would drift off and find herself standing in darkness, complete and absolute, the kind of black that pressed against the eyes like a physical thing. She was not afraid of it, which was strange. The darkness felt familiar, safe even. Then she understood. This was Kael's darkness, the 300 years he had spent trapped in stone. Sarah. His voice came from everywhere and nowhere, young and afraid in a way she had never heard him sound in waking life. Don't leave me alone. The scene shifted. She saw through his eyes now, felt what he felt. The moment of betrayal, Morgana's spell wrapping around him like chains. his packmates screaming as they were corrupted. The horror of feeling his body transformed to stone while his mind remained trapped inside. Then the silence. Decades of it. Nothing but his own thoughts circling endlessly. Time losing meaning. Madness creeping close, held at bay by sheer stubbornness. Until a voice cut through the darkness. Young, broken, desperate. Please, I can't do this anymore. I can't be alone. Sarah's voice. 5 years ago, the first night she had come to the statue. In the memory she felt Kael's consciousness surge toward that voice like a drowning man toward air. It was an anchor. A reminder that he was still real, still alive beneath the stone prison. Every night for 5 years, he had counted down the hours until she would come, had memorized every word she spoke, had fallen in love with her voice, her strength, her refusal to give up even when she wanted to. Sarah woke gasping, tears streaming down her face. The dream walking had activated. The gift her mother had passed down. The ability to see memories, to walk through the experiences of others as if they were her own. She understood now why Kael had counted every night, why he looked at her with such intensity. He had lived 5 years of his 300-year imprisonment, listening to her, knowing her, loving her, from within a prison of stone. The knowledge settled into her chest, warm and terrifying. Over the next few days, the dreams intensified. She would slip into Kael's memories at random moments. See his life 300 years ago, his pack vital and strong. Lyra, the flamekeeper he had fought beside. Not a lover as Sarah had feared, but a sister in arms. Watching Lyra fall to Morgana's dark magic while he was helpless to save her. The guilt he carried. The rage, the 3 centuries of planning revenge that could never be enacted from within stone. You have to stop, Kael told her one evening after training. They sat in her small apartment, a fire crackling in the hearth. The dream walking is getting stronger. You will lose yourself in my memories if you are not careful. I can control it. Can you? His golden eyes pinned her with uncomfortable intensity. You fell asleep during meditation today. Celestia said you were trapped in a memory for 20 minutes. We could not wake you. Sarah looked away. I'm fine. You are not fine. Dreamwalking is dangerous, Sarah. My mother had the gift. She warned me about it before she died. You can drown in another person's past, forget where you end and they begin. Your mother was a dream walker. She was many things, and the gift killed her in the end. She walked into a dark memory and never found her way out. The words hung heavy between them. I'll be more careful, Sarah promised. But that night she dreamed again, and this time she heard Kyle's thoughts from just days ago. His fear of losing her, his certainty that he was not worthy of her sacrifice, his desperate hope that somehow they would survive this. She woke to find tears on her face and an ache in her chest that was not entirely her own. The line between them was blurring. 3 weeks after Kyle's awakening, everything changed again. Sarah was practicing sword forms with Jasper when Orion came running through the forest, his face pale. Celestia needs you. Now. Something's wrong. They found the old woman in her cottage at the forest's edge, staring at a scrying bowl filled with dark water. Her expression was grim. He is coming, she said without preamble. The one Morgana sent to watch you, Corvus, but he is hurt, badly. Where? Kael's voice was sharp. The old shrine, 2 miles north. He is calling for help. They ran. Kael in wolf form faster than any horse, with Sarah clinging to his back. Jasper and Orion following on foot, weapons drawn. The winter forest blurred past branches heavy with snow. The world reduced to speed and urgency. The old shrine was a ruin, once a place of worship for the old gods, now just crumbling stone, half buried in snow and time. And there, collapsed against the broken altar, was a man, Corvus. Sarah recognized him from town. The blacksmith, quiet, kept to himself, always watching from the edges. She had thought him unfriendly. Now she understood he had been a prisoner forced to spy on her every move. He looked terrible. His skin was ashen, marked with black veins that pulsed with sickening regularity. Dark magic corruption. Blood soaked his shirt from wounds that would not heal. His eyes, when they opened, were filled with pain and desperate relief. You came, he rasped. Kael shifted to human form, approaching cautiously. What happened? She knows. Morgana knows I warned you. She knows I have been fighting her control. Corvus coughed and blood flecked his lips. She made an example of me. Reminded me what happens to traitors. We can help you, Sarah said, kneeling beside him. Up close, she could see he was young, maybe 35. With Morgana's corruption stripped away, he might have been handsome. I can try to purify the dark magic. No, Corvus gripped her wrist with surprising strength. It's too deep. She made sure of that. The only way to break her hold completely is to end me. I won't kill you. You do not understand. As long as I live, she can use me, can see through my eyes, can control my body. I am her weapon, and I am aimed at you. His eyes met hers, desperate and pleading. Please, I do not want to hurt anyone else. I have done enough evil in her service. There has to be another way. Listen to me. Corvus's voice strengthened, urgent. She is coming sooner than you think. Not 3 weeks, days, maybe less. She felt your bond form with the Alpha. It terrified her, son. A mated pair of Flamekeeper and Alpha has not existed for 500 years. You are more dangerous than she anticipated. Kale's hand found Sarah's shoulder. Can you purify him truly? I don't know. I've never tried with corruption this deep. Let me try, Sarah said, placing her hands on Corvus's chest. She closed her eyes, reaching for the fire that lived in her blood, felt it respond eager and bright. She pushed it into him gentle, as she could manage, seeking out the dark magic that had wrapped around his soul like chains. The darkness fought back. It was alive in a way she had not expected. Sentient, Morgana's will embedded in the corruption like a poison. It writhed away from her fire, burrowing deeper into Corvus's body, and he screamed. Sarah pulled back, horrified. Corvus was paler than before, the black veins spreading further across his skin. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, I cannot do it. The magic is too strong. Corvus smiled through the pain. You tried. That is more than anyone has done for me in 10 years. He looked at Kyle. Protect her. When Morgana comes, she will target the Flamekeeper first. Break her bond, break her power. I will guard her with my life, Kale said solemnly. Good. Corvus's eyes began to close. Tell my mother, if you survive this, that I tried to fight it, that I never wanted to serve the darkness. Tell her I'm sorry. Your mother, Sarah's chest tightened. Where is she? But Corvus was fading, his breath coming in shallow gasps. I will try to hold her back, distract her, give you more time. It is the last good thing I can do. Then he vanished. Not died. Vanished, dissolved into shadow, and was gone as if he had never been there at all. Sarah stared at the empty space where he had lain. What just happened? Morgana pulled him back, Kale said grimly. She still controls him. He is probably being punished as we speak. We have to help him. We cannot, not yet. First we survive. Then we find a way to free those she has enslaved. They returned to Greyhaven in heavy silence. That night, Shadow Wolves attacked again. Not many, just 3. But they killed 2 people before Sarah and Kyle could respond. An elderly couple who lived on the outskirts of town, too far from the protection of the main square. Sarah burned the corrupted wolves to ash and stood in the couple's destroyed home, looking at the blood on the walls, and felt rage ignite in her chest. This has to stop, she said. But when they returned to town, half the people who gathered were not grateful. They were angry. She brought this on us, a woman shouted, pointing at Sarah. 5 years of peace, then she awakens her power, and suddenly we have monsters at our door. My parents are dead because of her. A young man, maybe 20, with tears streaming down his face. She should leave. Take the danger with her. The words hit like physical blows. Sarah wanted to argue to defend herself. But how could she when they were right? The attacks had started when she awakened. People were dying because Morgana wanted her dead. Enough, Orion's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Sarah is not responsible for Morgana's evil. We all knew this day might come. My father knew. His father knew. For 3 generations, Guardians have prepared for the Flamekeeper's return. But did we have to die for it? Someone else shouted. Sarah turned and ran. She made it to the forest before the tears came. Great racking sobs that shook her entire body. She collapsed against a tree, sliding down into the snow, and let the grief and guilt consume her. Maybe they were right. Maybe she should leave. Run far away and let Morgana chase her into some empty wilderness where no innocent people would be caught in the crossfire. Running will not save them. Celestia's voice. The old woman appeared from between the trees as if summoned by Sarah's despair. It might. If I'm gone, Morgana has no reason to attack Greyhaven. Morgana needs no reason beyond cruelty. If you run, she will punish this town for harboring you. She will make an example of everyone who helped. Children, elderly. She does not discriminate in her vengeance. Then what do I do? Celestia settled beside her in the snow, her ancient bones creaking. You become strong enough to protect them. Strong enough to end her. I'm not strong enough. 3 weeks of training doesn't make me a warrior. No, Celestia agreed, but there is a way to increase your power. Quickly, adequate devis. Sarah looked up, hope and fear warring in her chest. What way? The ritual of binding. It is ancient magic older than the flamekeepers, older than the first wolves. It completely joins the souls of a flamekeeper and their alpha mate. Your power would increase tenfold. You would fight as one being, knowing each other's thoughts, feeling each other's strength. That sounds too good to be true. What's the key? Celestia's eyes were sad. Two costs. First, your dream walking ability will be burned away in the binding. The gift your mother passed to you will be gone forever. The words hit like a punch. Dreamwalking was her last connection to her mother, the last piece of her family's magic that lived in her blood. And second, Sarah asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know, your lives become truly bound. If one of you dies, the other dies as well, instantly, no matter the distance between you. Sarah's mind reeled. Give up her mother's gift. Tie her life to Kale so completely that his death meant hers. I need to think about it. Think quickly, Celestia said, rising. Morgana comes soon, and we need every advantage we can muster. That night, Sarah sat in her apartment, staring at her mother's diary. She had read it cover to cover, memorized every word. But without dream walking, she would never experience her mother's memories, never walk through her past, never truly know her beyond these written words. A knock at the door. Kale entered without waiting for permission, his expression troubled. Celestia told me about the ritual, and I will not ask you to do it. The sacrifice is too great. It's not just my choice, Sarah pointed out. It binds you too. If I die, you die. I have lived 300 years, Kale said quietly, settling into the chair across from her, most of them in darkness. If I have only days left but spend them free fighting beside you, that is enough. But you are 20 years old, Sarah. You have barely begun your life. What life? The words came out bitter. 5 years of isolation, working in a bakery alone, talking to statues. That was not your fault. I know, but it was my life. And now I have a chance to make it mean something. To save people. To stop the witch who murdered my family. She met his golden eyes. If we don't do this ritual, we'll probably die anyway. At least this way we die together. That is not comforting. Despite everything, Sarah found herself smiling. No, I suppose it's not. Kale leaned forward, his expression intense. I need you to understand something. I have feelings for you. Strong feelings that I do not entirely comprehend. Part of it is the mate bond, yes, but part of it is you, your strength, your refusal to give up. The way you came to that statue every night, even when you thought it was madness. You are extraordinary, Serafina Emberheart, and I do not want you to bind yourself to me out of obligation or desperation. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. What if it's not obligation? What? She stood, closing the distance between them. What if I have feelings too? What if I've been falling for you since the moment you emerged from stone? What if the thought of you dying because I was too afraid to do this ritual is worse than any sacrifice? Kale rose his hands, coming up to cup her face with infinite gentleness. You do not know me. Not truly. You have seen glimpses through dream walking, but I know enough, Sarah interrupted. I know you counted every night I came to you. I know you were kind, even when you were terrified. I know you fight to protect others, even when it costs you everything. I know that in 3 weeks, you have made me feel less alone than I have felt in 5 years. Sarah, she kissed him. It was not graceful, not practiced, but it was real, desperate and tender, and full of all the words neither of them could quite speak. Kale's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and for a moment the world reduced to just this. Just them. Just the impossible connection between a girl who talked to stone and the wolf who listened. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah whispered, Let's do it. The ritual. Together. Kale rested his forehead against hers. Are you certain? No, but I'm willing. That will have to be enough. 2 days later, deep in the forest under a moon that hung full and bright, Celestia prepared the ritual space. A circle of ancient stones, each one carved with symbols that predated written language. Candles arranged in patterns that made Sarah's eyes water if she looked too long. The air itself felt thick with power pressing against her skin like invisible hands. Are you ready? Celestia asked. Sarah and Keiko stood at opposite sides of the circle. She wore a simple white dress, her dark hair loose. Kale had silver paint marking his face and chest wolf symbols that represented his pack. Ready, they said in unison. Then begin. They entered the circle from opposite sides, meeting in the center. Kneeling, they joined hands, palms pressed together. Sarah felt the warmth of his skin, the calluses from centuries of battle, the slight tremor that betrayed his own nervousness. Celestia began to chant in a language Sarah did not recognize. Old words. Power words. The candles flared brighter flames stretching toward the sky. Heat built in Sarah's chest, of us. Her sacred fire responding to the ritual. It poured down on her arms into her hands, flowing into Kyle. She gasped at the sensation. It felt like giving away pieces of herself, essential pieces, and having them return transformed. Silver light erupted from Kale, wolf magic primal and ancient. It twined with her golden flames, the two powers dancing together, merging, becoming something new. Then the dream walking began to fade. Sarah felt it like a physical loss. The gift her mother had passed down, the ability to see memories and walk through the past, was burning away in the fire of the binding. She saw her mother's face one last time, smiling and said in proud, "Let go, baby," her mother's voice whispered through her mind. "Let go and become what you were meant to be." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as the gift died, as that connection to her mother's magic severed completely. But then something else filled the emptiness. Kael's presence. His mind, his memories, his very soul pressing against hers. She felt his fear and love and desperate hope. Felt 300 years of loneliness in the overwhelming relief of finally being free. Felt his absolute certainty that she was worth any sacrifice. And he felt her, all of her. The grief and guilt and secret hope. The love she had been afraid to name. The determination to protect these people, even if it cost her everything. Their souls merged. The golden fire and silver light exploded outward, a pillar of power that pierced the night sky. Sarah felt herself changing on a fundamental level. Not physically, but deeper. Her magic amplified tenfold. Her connection to the sacred flame becoming a raging inferno she could barely contain. And through it all, Kael was there, steady and strong and absolutely unwavering. When the light finally faded, they knelt together in the circle, still holding hands. But now the connection was permanent. She could feel him in the back of her mind like a second heartbeat, could sense his emotions as clearly as her own. "It is done," Celestia said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "You are truly bound now, mind, body, and soul." Sarah looked at Kael through new eyes, seeing him and feeling him simultaneously. The bond between them thrummed with power, a living thing that connected them across any distance. "How do you feel?" he asked, his voice soft. "Different, stronger, terrified." She paused, complete. Kael smiled, and through their bond, she felt his joy and relief, like sunshine breaking through clouds. But the moment shattered as a voice echoed through the forest, cold and cruel and ancient beyond measure. "How touching. The little flamekeeper found her mate, and you even bound yourselves together. How deliciously convenient." Morgana, not physically present, but her voice carried on the wind, filled with dark amusement. "Did you think I would not notice such a surge of power? Did you think binding yourselves would make you stronger?" The witch's laughter was like breaking glass. "You made yourselves weaker children. Now when I kill one of you, I claim both. Two for the price of one." The voice faded, leaving only winter silence. Sarah looked at Kael, fear clutching her chest. Had they made a terrible mistake? But Kael's hand tightened on hers, and through their bond she felt his certainty. "We fight together," he said. "We survive together, or we fall together. But we are not alone. Not anymore." And somehow, despite the terror and the impossible odds and the witch's mocking words, that was enough. They walked back to Greyhaven hand in hand, the bond between them burning bright as a star. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. The battle was coming, but they were ready, or as ready as they would ever be. 3 days. That was all the warning they had. 3 days between the binding ritual and the night Morgana Nightshade came to Greyhaven with an army of darkness at her back. Sarah stood on the wall that Orion's people had hastily constructed around the town square. Not much of a fortification, wooden posts and makeshift barriers, but it was something. A line between safety and the shadows gathering in the mountains. She could feel them coming. Through the bond with Kael, she sensed his wolf's awareness of predators moving through the forest. Dozens of them, maybe more. The corrupted remnants of packs that had once run free under moonlight, now twisted into monsters that knew only hunger and pain. "They are here," Kael said beside her, his golden eyes fixed on the tree line. As if summoned by his words, they emerged. Shadow wolves poured from the forest like a dark tide. 30, 40, 50 of them. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, their bodies mottled with corruption. Behind them came something worse. Wraiths, 5 figures of pure shadow, vaguely human-shaped, but wrong, in ways that made the eye slide away from looking too long. They glided above the snow, leaving trails of frost and decay in their wake. And at the center of it all, a woman. Morgana Nightshade. She walked as if the snow did not dare touch her feet, tall and slender, wrapped in robes that seemed woven from midnight itself. Her skin was pale as death, her hair black as a raven's wing, and moving as if underwater despite the still air. But it was her eyes that truly horrified. Solid black from edge to edge, swallowing light, reflecting nothing. The temperature dropped 20 degrees with her presence. Seraphina Emberheart, Morgana's voice carried across the distance, melodious and cold. Last daughter of the Flamekeeper line, you have caused me considerable inconvenience. Sarah's hands ignited with golden fire. Through the bonnet she felt Kael's strength flowing into her, steady as bedrock. They were one now, mind and soul in power. You murdered my family, Sarah called back, her voice stronger than she felt. You will answer for that. Morgana laughed, a sound like ice cracking over deep water. Will I? And who will make me answer, child? You, with your 3 weeks of training, your wolf mate, powerful though he is, the pathetic townspeople hiding behind wooden walls. She raised one pale hand and the shadow army surged forward. Kill them all. The battle began with screams. Shadow wolves crashed against the makeshift barriers, their corrupted bodies stronger than living flesh. Wood splintered, people scattered. Sarah saw Orion rallying defenders, his ancient sword blazing with blessed light. Jasper fought beside his father, his twin daggers flashing silver. Kael shifted to wolf form and leaped from the wall, a blur of silver fur and lethal grace. He tore into the shadow wolves with savage efficiency, but there were too many. For every one he killed, 2 more took its place. Sarah channeled her fire, sending waves of purifying flame washing over the attackers. Some of the corrupted wolves fell, the darkness burned from them. But these were older victims than the ones from before. The corruption had taken deeper root. Most could not be saved. A wraith glided toward the wall where Sarah stood. She felt its presence like ice in her veins, like despair given form. It reached for her with hands made of shadow, and where it touched the wooden barrier, the wood rotted and crumbled to dust. Sarah threw fire at it. The wraith shrieked a sound that made her ears bleed, but the flames passed through it like smoke. Physical fire could not harm the incorporeal. Sarah down, Celestia's voice. The old woman appeared beside her, staff raised. Words of power tumbled from her lips, ancient and terrible. Light erupted from the staff's tip, not fire but pure radiance. The wraith recoiled, screaming, dissolving into wisps of shadow. But the effort cost Celestia dearly. She staggered, her face gray with exhaustion. I can manage 2, maybe 3 more, she gasped. But there are 5. You must find another way. Through the chaos, Sarah saw Jasper go down. A shadow wolf had gotten past his defenses, its teeth sinking into his shoulder. He screamed, and Sarah watched in horror as black veins began spreading from the wound. Corruption. Spreading fast. Orion reached his son, killing the wolf, but the damage was done. Jasper's eyes rolled back, his body convulsing. The dark magic was taking hold, turning him into what he had fought against. No, Orion's cry of anguish cut through the battle. He hauled Jasper's seizing form away from the fighting toward the church, where they had prepared a sanctified room for exactly this possibility. But Sarah could see the agony on the older man's face, could see him wrestling with the knowledge that he might have to watch his son become a monster, or worse, end his suffering before the transformation completed. The battle turned. More shadow wolves breached the walls. A wraith killed 3 defenders with a single touch, their bodies aging a lifetime in seconds, crumbling to dust. People were screaming, running, dying. They were losing. Sarah reached for more power, drawing on the bond with Kael, felt his strength surge into her even as he fought his own desperate battle below. But it was not enough. She could save some, but not all. Could not be everywhere at once. Then a figure emerged from the shadows behind Morgana's army. Corvus, but not the broken man they had found at the shrine. This was something else entirely. Something terrible. Half his body was still human, still recognizable as the blacksmith who had watched Sarah for 5 years. But the other half had been transformed into pure nightmare. Shadow and corruption had consumed his right side, turning flesh to something that writhed and pulsed with dark magic. His right eye glowed red. His right arm ended in claws of solidified darkness. He moved with terrible speed, tearing through the shadow wolves. Not to help them, but because Morgana was puppeting his body, using him as her weapon. And he was headed straight for Sarah. Kael intercepted him. Wolf and corrupted man collided in a blur of silver fur and dark magic. They rolled across the snow, snapping and clawing. Corvus was strong unnaturally, so powered by Morgana's will. His shadowed claws raked across Kael's flank, and Sarah felt the pain lance through her own body via their bond. She screamed, falling to her knees. Through their connection, she felt Kael's determination, his absolute refusal to let Corvus reach her. But she also felt his pain, felt the dark magic from those claws burning into his flesh, trying to corrupt him as it had corrupted so many others. Corvus's jaws opened, fangs elongated by shadow aiming for Kael's throat. Then Corvus stopped. His human eye, the left one, widened with desperate clarity. His human hand came up trembling, fighting against Morgana's control, fighting against his own corrupted body. No? Corvus's voice was barely recognizable, distorted by the changes wrought upon him. Not him, not her. I will not. Through the bond, Sarah felt Kael's surprise, felt the moment Corvus's shadowed claws withdrew instead of striking. Morgana's voice echoed across the battlefield, sharp with anger. You dare defy me. You are mine, Corvus. Mine, body and soul. I was yours. Corvus gasped, his body shaking as he fought her control. You made me your slave. Made me watch that girl for 5 years, knowing what you planned to do to her. Made me complicit in your evil. But I am still human enough to choose, and I choose to fight you. He turned away from Kael, turned toward the shadow wolves that still poured through the breached walls. Sarah, Corvus shouted, I can hold them, but not for long. When I fall, burn everything. Promise me. Corvus, no. But he was already moving, a blur of human determination and corrupted power turning against itself. He crashed into the mass of shadow wolves, his claws tearing through their ranks. The creatures turned on him confused as their master's puppet attacked them instead of the defenders. Morgana shrieked a sound of pure fury. Dark magic lashed out from her, striking Corvus, trying to force him back under control. But he fought it, every second, every moment, fighting with everything he had left. I was Corvus Ashford, he roared, his voice breaking. Son of Margaret Ashford, I was a good man before you broke me, and I will die a good man, Ashford. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow, her mother's maiden name. Corvus was family, distant but family. A cousin she had never known existed because Morgana had taken him a decade ago and twisted him into a weapon. Corvus looked at her one last time with his human eye. There was peace there, and relief. Tell my mother I fought it, he said. Tell her I tried to come home. Then he exploded, not with fire or blood, but with pure dark magic. All the corruption Morgana had forced into him over a decade, all the twisted power she had used to control him, he turned inward and detonated it. The blast was catastrophic. 15 shadow wolves simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the force. 2 wraiths were torn apart, their incorporeal forms shredded by the backwash of power. The shockwave knocked Sarah off the wall. She hit the ground hard, stars exploding across her vision. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Morgana screaming, not in pain but in rage at losing her puppet so completely. Kael was at Sarah's side, instantly shifting to human form. Blood poured from the wounds on his side where Corvus's claws had torn through fur and flesh. The dark magic in those wounds was spreading, black veins creeping across his ribs. I am fine, he lied through gritted teeth. Through their bond, Sarah felt the truth. The corruption was burning into him, trying to take hold. If she did not purify it soon, Kael would fall to the same darkness that had claimed Corvus. But the battle still raged. Half the shadow wolves were dead or dying, but the remaining wraiths glided through the town, killing everything they touched. Orion was barricaded in the church with his corrupted son, unable to help. Celestia had collapsed from magical exhaustion. A dozen townspeople lay dead or wounded. Sarah placed her hands on Kael's wounds, channeled her sacred fire through their bond, letting it flow from her into him. She felt the dark magic fight back, writhing like a living thing. But her fire was stronger now, amplified by the binding ritual. It burned through the corruption, purifying it, healing the torn flesh beneath. Kael gasped as the pain faded. Their eyes met, golden and dark, and in that moment no words were needed. Through the bond, she felt his love and gratitude and fierce determination. Together, he said. Together, she agreed. Kael shifted to wolf form and charged back into the fray. Sarah climbed back onto the wall, gathering her power for one final push. That was when Morgana decided to stop playing with them. The witch glided forward and the remaining shadow creatures parted before her like a dark sea. She raised both hands and black flames erupted around her. Not the purifying fire of the Flame Keepers, but its opposite. Fire that consumed not flesh, but life itself. Hope and warmth and light, and all burned away in its terrible cold arms. Enough games, Morgana said, her voice carrying to every corner of the battle. I will end this myself. She looked directly at Sarah. Those black eyes, empty of all humanity, locked onto her. and Sarah felt the full weight of 3 centuries of accumulated power pressing down on her consciousness. Your mother died screaming, Morgana said conversationally as if discussing the weather. Did you know that I let her live long enough to know she had failed? Long enough to understand that you would grow us alone and broken. The look in her eyes when she realized, delicious. Rage exploded through Sarah, white hot and all-consuming. Her fire blazed brighter than it ever had, fed by fury and grief, and 5 years of unanswered questions. She threw everything she had at Morgana, a column of golden flame that lit the night like a second sun. The witch raised one hand almost lazily. The black fire met the gold. Where they touched, reality itself seemed to scream. Light and dark, life and death, creation and entropy locked in fundamental opposition. For a moment, they were evenly matched. Then Morgana smiled and pushed harder. The black flames overwhelmed the gold. Sarah screamed as they washed over her, cold beyond imagining. She felt them eating at her fire, trying to consume the very essence of what she was, trying to snuff out the sacred flame that lived in her blood. Through the bond, Kael roared in shared agony. He abandoned his fight with the shadow wolves and charged toward Morgana, massive jaws aimed for her throat. She flicked a finger. Kael flew backwards, slamming into the church wall hard enough to crack stone. Through their connection, Sarah felt ribs break, felt him struggling to breathe, to rise, to keep fighting. But his body would not obey. Did you truly think you could defeat me? Morgana asked, walking slowly towards Sarah. Each step left flowers dead and withered in her wake. I have mastered death magic for 300 years. I have killed more flame keepers than you can imagine. You are nothing. A child playing with forces beyond her comprehension. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs would not support her. The black flames had drained her, left her hollow. Through the bond, she felt Kael's desperation, his absolute refusal to watch her die. But he was too injured to help. This was it. This was how it ended. Morgana raised her hand for the killing blow. Then Sarah felt something shift in her perception. The bond with Kael, already strong, suddenly opened wider. Not just his strength flowing into her, but his memories, his experiences, the shared vision that the binding had created. And through Kael's memories, Sarah saw something that made her pause. Morgana, 300 years ago, before the corruption, before the darkness. She had been beautiful in a completely different way. Warm eyes instead of black voids, a smile that lit her face with genuine joy. She had been a flamekeeper like Sarah, young and strong and dedicated to protecting the innocent. And she had loved an alpha named Darius. Sarah saw their courtship through Kael's eyes. He had been there, part of Darius's pack, had watched the romance bloom between Flamekeeper and Alpha, had celebrated their binding rituals so similar to what Sarah and Kael had experienced. But Darius had been ambitious, hungry for power beyond what nature had given him. He had found dark magic ancient and terrible, and convinced himself he could control it. He had been wrong. The corruption took him slowly, changed him, made him paranoid and cruel. When Morgana tried to help him, tried to purify the darkness from his soul, he had seen it as betrayal, as an attempt to steal his power. Darius had attacked her, had tried to kill her to protect his newfound strength, and Morgana had been forced to defend herself. Sarah saw the moment of Darius's death through Kael's memory, saw Morgana's sacred fire burning through the alpha she loved, purifying him but unable to save him, saw the light leave his eyes, saw Morgana's anguish as she realized she had killed her mate. But the dark magic in Darius had not died with him. It had transferred to Morgana in that final moment, infected her through their bond. And with no one to help her, no one who understood what was happening, she had fallen to it. 300 years of corruption growing. 300 years of the darkness whispering that everyone had betrayed her, that love was weakness, that power was the only thing that mattered. Morgana had not chosen to become a monster. She had been driven to it by grief and isolation and magic that ate away at her soul piece by piece until nothing remained of the woman she had been. Sarah saw all of this in the space between heartbeats, understood it in a way she could not explain. And that understanding changed everything. You were like me, Sarah whispered. Morgana's hand froze mid-strike. For the first time, emotion flickered across her perfect face. Surprise, then suspicion. What did you say? You were a flamekeeper. You loved an alpha. You tried to save him and lost him. The dark magic took you because you were alone and no one understood what was happening to you. How do you know that? Morgana's voice shook the first crack in her terrible composure. Because I see it. Through my bond with Kael. Through his memories of who you were. Morgana Nightshade, daughter of Alara, protector of the northern reaches. You saved hundreds of lives before the darkness claimed you. Stop. The word was barely a whisper. You did not choose this. The magic corrupted you, made you into something you never wanted to be. 300 years of slowly losing yourself until you could not remember what it felt like to be human. Stop. Morgana's voice cracked completely. The black fire around her hands flickered and wavered. Sarah struggled to her feet, every muscle screaming in protest. She took a step toward the witch, then another. Through the bond, she felt Kale's confusion and fear, but also his trust, his absolute faith in her judgment. I could kill you, Sarah said quietly. My fire is strong enough now. I could burn away the darkness and let you die. Give you the peace you have been denied for 3 centuries. Morgana stared at her, and for just a moment, Sarah saw past the black eyes to the woman trapped beneath, saw the bone-deep exhaustion, the loneliness that made Sarah's 5 years feel like nothing, the desperate desire for an end to the pain. But I am not going to do that, Sarah continued, because that is what the darkness wants. It wants me to choose death and vile antipons, to become like you, and I refuse. She opened her arms, let her fire blaze to life, but not as a weapon, as an embrace, as purifying light that spread outward like dawn breaking over mountains. I am going to save you, Sarah said, the way no one saved you 300 years ago, the way you deserve to be saved. You cannot, Morgana whispered, but there was desperate hope in her voice. The corruption is too deep. I am too far gone. Maybe, but I have to try, because if I do not, then you were right. Then love is weakness and power is everything, and the whole world should burn. I refuse to believe that. I refuse to let the darkness win. Sarah closed the distance between them, placed her hands on Morgana's chest right where a living heart would beat. The witch could have killed her, could have ended it all with a single strike, but she did not. Instead, Morgana closed her black eyes and whispered, "Please, I am so tired." The purification began. It was nothing like cleansing the shadow wolves or healing Kale's wounds. This was corruption that had grown for 3 centuries, roots dug so deep into Morgana's soul that burning it away felt like tearing the witch apart piece by piece. Morgana screamed. The sound was terrible. Agony and relief mixed together. The dark magic fought back with everything it had, writhing and twisting, trying to escape the sacred flame. But Sarah held firm, drew on the bond with Kyle, using his strength to anchor her. Used the love she had found in this impossible journey to fuel her fire. Through Morgana's corruption, Sarah saw flashes of who she had been, a young woman laughing in sunlight, a flamekeeper defending a village from true darkness, a bride on her binding day looking at her alpha mate with joy and love and hope for the future. All of it buried beneath 300 years of pain. Sarah burned deeper, pushed her fire into the darkest places, the parts of Morgana that had been twisted so thoroughly she could not remember what it felt like to be good. And slowly, agonizingly, the corruption began to yield. Black veins that had spread through Morgana's entire being started to fade. The solid black of her eyes cracked, revealing brown irises beneath. Her skin, pale as death, began to flush with color. But the process was killing her. Not the purification itself, but time. 3 centuries of unnatural life, sustained only by dark magic. As the corruption burned away, Morgana's true age began to catch up with her. Her skin wrinkled. Her hair went from black to white. Her body, held in false youth for so long, began to age rapidly. "Thank you, Tuan." Morgana gasped, her voice no longer cold and cruel but soft with gratitude. "Thank you for giving me myself back, if only for a moment." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "I am sorry I could not do more. You did everything. You gave me peace. You reminded me that I was human once." Morgana's aging hand reached up to touch Sarah's face. "You are stronger than I ever was. Promise me you will not make my mistakes. Promise me you will hold on to your love no matter what darkness comes." "I promise." Morgana smiled, and it was beautiful. The smile of the woman she had been before corruption took her. "Good. Then my death has meaning." But Morgana did not die, not completely. As her body crumbled to ash, as the last of her physical form dissolved into the wind, something remained. A light, golden and pure, nothing like the black flame she had wielded. It hovered in the air where she had stood, warm and gentle. And from that light came Morgana's voice, changed, no longer cold, but filled with warmth and regret and determination. "I cannot rest," the spirit said, "not while my mistakes still poison the world. I will stay Serafina Emberheart. I will guide you, teach you, help you undo the damage I caused in my 3 centuries of madness. It is the least I can do to atone. The light condensed flowing into the pendant around Sarah's neck, the one her mother had given her before she died. It grew warm against her skin, pulsing with gentle power. And in the back of her mind, Sarah felt another presence join her bond with Kyle. Not as intrusive or complete, but there. Morgana's spirit offering knowledge and guidance in the collected wisdom of 300 years. The battle was over. The remaining shadow creatures, without Morgana's will to drive them, simply collapsed. The corruption left them, and they either died peacefully or fled into the forest as free wolves once more. The wraiths dissolved like morning mist. Silence fell over Greyhaven. Sarah turned to find Kyle limping toward her, shifted back to human form. His wounds were healing, already the darkness purged. Through their bond, she felt his pride and love and overwhelming relief. They met in the center of the square and simply held each other. No words necessary. Both alive, both whole, together. Around them, the townspeople emerged from hiding. Some wept with relief, others tended to the wounded. Orion came from the church supporting Jasper. The young man was pale and shaking, but the corruption had been contained. He would live. "You did it," Celestia said, approaching slowly. The old woman looked ancient now, drained by the battle's toll, but she smiled. "You saved her. I did not think it possible." "Neither did I," Sarah admitted, "but I had to train my... Your mother would be proud." The words hit harder than any dark magic. Sarah felt tears start again and did not bother to hide them. Let them fall freely as Kael held her close, and the sun began to rise over a town that had survived the impossible. The cleanup took days. The wounded to heal, the dead to bury, walls to repair, and wards to strengthen. But through it all, Sarah felt Morgana's presence in the pendant, felt the spirit offering knowledge when asked, staying silent when not needed, teaching her things about sacred fire that would have taken years to learn otherwise. 6 months passed. Greyhaven rebuilt. The scars of battle faded, though they did not disappear entirely. Jasper recovered fully stronger for having faced corruption and overcome it. Orion worked with Celestia to create better defenses, better ways to protect the town should darkness come again. But Sarah and Kael did not stay. They stood in the town square one spring morning, packs prepared, ready to leave. A small crowd had gathered to see them off. People who had become family over those 6 months, who had fought beside them, who had learned to trust in the impossible. "You do not have to go," Orion said, though his eyes showed he understood. "There are others," Sarah replied, touching the pendant where Morgana's spirit resided. "She told me. 12 other alphas cursed and sealed in stone across the world, waiting for someone to free them, waiting for someone to care enough to try. And their packs," Kael added, "corrupted or scattered or lost. We can help them. We can undo some of what Morgana did in her madness." Jasper stepped forward, pressing a bundle into Sarah's hands. "Food for the road. And this." He added a small carved wolf no bigger than her palm. "To remember us." "I could never forget," Sarah said, pulling him into a hug. One by one she embraced them. Orion, who had given her a job when no one else would. Celestia, who had taught her to understand her power. The townspeople who had fought beside her. Then she and Kael walked through the gates, heading west toward the first of the cursed alphas Morgana's spirit had revealed. 1 year later, they had freed three alphas who had been trapped in stone waiting for someone to care. 3 packs slowly reforming, learning to trust again. 3 small victories against the darkness. And Sarah was pregnant. She felt the life growing inside her, small and precious. Through the bond, Kael was simultaneously terrified and overjoyed. They had stopped in a small town to rest, to prepare for the next stage of their journey. "We can wait," Kael said for the 100th time. "Free the others after the baby is born. Stay somewhere safe." "There is no safe," Sarah replied, her hand on her stomach. "Not while darkness still exists in the world. Our child will be born into a better world than the one I grew up in. We will make sure of it." They sat by a campfire under stars that blazed brilliant and cold. The 3 alphas they had freed in wolf form dozed nearby, an impromptu pack bound not by blood, but by shared purpose. Morgana's spirit emerged from the pendant, manifesting as a translucent figure of golden light. She looked at the sleeping wolves with an expression of profound sadness and hope. "I destroyed so many packs," the spirit said quietly. "Corrupted so many lives, it will take lifetimes to undo the damage." "Then we start now," Sarah said firmly. "1 alpha at a time. 1 pack at a time, until every curse is broken and every corruption purified. You are more forgiving than I deserve. Maybe, but you are trying to make amends. That has to count for something." Kale wrapped his arm around Sarah's shoulders, pulling her close. Through their bond, she felt his contentment, his peace. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, despite everything they had lost and still had to face, they had each other. They had purpose. They had hope. Where next? Kale asked. Morgana's spirit pointed west. The Rocky Mountains. An alpha named Fenris sealed for 200 years. His pack was large, powerful. If we can save them, then we save them, Sarah finished. She looked at Kyle, at the wolves sleeping nearby, at the child growing inside her. All of them, however long it takes. The fire crackled. Sparks rose toward the stars. And in that moment, sitting between her wolfmate and the spirit of a redeemed enemy, Sarah felt something she had not experienced since the night her mother died. She felt complete. The journey was far from over. 12 alphas remained cursed. Countless packs needed help. Darkness still lurked in the world's forgotten places. But she was not the lonely girl who talked to stone anymore. She was Seraphina Emberheart, flamekeeper, mate to an alpha, mother-to-be. And she carried sacred fire that could purify any darkness, no matter how deep. The stone wolf had answered her prayers one winter night. Now she would answer the prayers of everyone still trapped in stone, waiting for someone to care enough to set them free. Let's go home, Kale said softly. Sarah smiled. We are home. Wherever we go together, that's home. They sat in comfortable silence as the fire burned down to embers. Tomorrow they would resume their journey, would face new dangers, new challenges, new impossibilities. But tonight they simply held each other under infinite stars.